when you're talking about the golden age of Greece into the Hellenistic age and into much of the story of Rome, not the early story of Rome, but the later story of Rome, you are not talking about a simplified group or set or dominant state religion, at least not until 300 when you get Christianity. And by that time, Rome is no longer Rome, but we'll get to that in time. So, if I can run you through this layers of belief, our starting point is the basic gods, right? We know about these. The three sons of chaos, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Of course, their Roman equivalents are Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto. The Romans simply envelop Greek gods, which replace and go alongside the traditional Roman, or excuse me, traditional Etruscan beliefs of ancestor worship. And so the Romans do a blend, but in terms of the state gods, these become them. Of course, there's a wider pantheon, but we'll keep it simple. And there's not much to say about these. These are what they are. You know these stories, living on Mount Olympus, etc., etc. Power of sky, power of the underworld, and power of the seas. But as time goes on, and as we get into kind of the golden age of Greece, and especially Athenian philosophy, we start to see something else. We start to see this array of individuals like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And of course, there are many more, but these are kind of the three big ones that we tend to refer to. Of course, this is Socrates himself. You just kind of want to hug him. He looks kind of cuddly. He also looks sweaty and nasty, but whatever. And of course, this is the famous Plato's Academy, which he will establish and will be one of the centers of learning, along with Alexandria, in the ancient world through the kind of Greek and Hellenistic and even the Roman age. These guys are more concerned with why are we here and what's the point of things than they are concerned with the gods. Of course, you know Socrates was put to death for this. The claim was corrupting the youth, but corrupting the youth in his trial simply meant he was turning people away from the gods. But as we move on into the Hellenistic age, remember this is post Alexander in the great rise of the city of Alexandria and the institutions of Ptolemy and learning throughout this era in that Greek-like way, you will see the rise of new ways of thinking. These are most intensely Stoicism and Epicureanism. Stoicism, of course, is from Zeno of Citium. Now, neither of these guys were in Athens, but they both actually moved to Athens and studied in Alexandria. They were both living around the same time, but with very different philosophies. Zeno believed that the cosmos is ordered and rational. You may think of this as fate, that ultimate good will always prevail. So, since ultimate good will always prevail, you should submit to the natural order of things, and acceptance of that means that you should focus on duty, self discipline, and political participation, and betterment of society. And in doing that, all of society is ordered. This is very popular with the Romans. You can understand as we get into the Romans why this would be. On the other hand, you have Epicurus and Epicureanism. He will come at this from a very different standpoint. He will say, actually, there's no ultimate purpose in the universe. And if there's no ultimate purpose in the universe, if the cosmos is not ordered or rational at all, then the greatest good is pleasure. We should strive to serenity of the soul. And that's what really matters. Now, these two could not be more opposite in their standpoint, but they have one thing very powerful, and this was a hallmark of the Hellenistic age. Both of these guys are talking about how the cosmos is determined not by gods, but by a natural order of things. Unlike Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and the pre-Socratic philosophers, these guys truly dismissed the gods. This marks a very different age in Hellenistic philosophy. So you can see already multiple belief systems forming here. The problem is, as people are moving away from the God, you will have people who are actually opposed to this. They actually reject, they want God. And so what you see in the midst of this is the rise of something completely different. These mystery cults are religions that focus around a singular God. Now, that doesn't mean they're monotheistic. Some of them might be. Again, we're not really sure. They tend to not write anything down. Everything tends to be orally passed on and kind of memorized. They tend to meet in secret, although not all of them, but the rituals are very much a pattern of memory. What you will see is things like the Attis cult, which comes out of Anatolia, present-day Turkey, and it focuses on a single god that was prominent in there earlier. They focus on just Isis, one of the Egyptian gods. There will be in a Lucinian cult, which is a fascinating one. It actually revives a Minoan god that we don't really have a lot of records of, and we don't know much about that god. The Orphic cult is centered around Dionysus, not a major god in the Greek pantheon, but it becomes a new cult centered around that, and it's all about the myth of death and resurrection, and it gets complicated. But one of the fascinating ones is Mithraism. Because Mithraism doesn't actually come from the Greek world or even the Egyptian world, as some of these others do. Mithraism is a branch of Zoroastrianism. Mithras was an entity that lived on earth. He lived a life of great sacrifice and great suffering. He went around performing miracles. He gave bread and wine to humanity. He ended a drought. He ended a flood. He declared Sunday to be the most sacred day, and he declared December 25th to be the most sacred day of the year. This is the only written piece of evidence of the cult of Mithras that we have. It is a small piece of burial shroud that acknowledges that this person is a priest of Mithras. What we have are other people writing about it. In the Roman era, supposedly is this entity that fights a dragon, and usually there's a sacrifice of a bull involved in it. And this is kind of a temple and an engraving that we think is of the cult of Mithras. But we don't know this story because these were done in secret. And you might ask, well, why do the Romans actually even care about this? Why were people writing about this obscure cult? That probably doesn't matter because it was not obscure. Somewhere around 40 to 60% of the entire Roman army was part of the cult of Mithras. Multiple emperors will build temples to Mithras in order to kind of satisfy or keep their soldiers happy. As Christianity is on its rise in the 300s, very few people thought it would kind of last. The cult of Mithras was a much more powerful force. So, the one thing we have to understand is just how complex it is. Because there is the pantheon of gods, and those gods will be worshipped all the way through Rome and through the dawn of Christianity. We will see people worshiping these traditional gods as well as doing their ancestor worship in Rome. We see Hellenic philosophers being studied all through this age. Plato and Aristotle will be studied intensely by Christian and Islamic scholars. These are the guys who preserve some of this stuff. The Hellenistic philosophy of Stoicism and Epicureanism are going to be at the center of Roman society in their political structure. Most of the senators throughout the history of Rome, throughout the later history of Rome, will be studying these guys intensely, and yet underlying all of this in the later Hellenistic and through the Roman age, you will have these mystery cults who will have massive kind of appeal, not just among the common people, but among many leaders as well. But I hope this helps you make a little bit of sense of it. And don't worry, we will simplify down to some monotheistic powers soon enough.